You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
We're back for another season of Sirius Sports, where we get astrological and somewhat serious. And we got a whole new format this year. Al Dog he might make a cameo every now and then. He might stop by, but he's quite busy in his literary world. So we're bringing some new talent onto the squad. So let me introduce Osiris here. And Osiris and I have gotten to know each other through Twitter. And he's an astrologer. He's a trader. He's a world traveler and a hip hop aficionado. What am I missing out on here, Osiris?
Counselor, mental health background.
Yeah. So there we go. A
Yoga.
Renaissance guy, yoga. So we go back and forth on Twitter on a bunch of stuff. And I just thought, that he would be a great addition to the show because he's got deep astrological knowledge and he's got a lot of sports knowledge. So Osiris will be here with us, and our buddy Ferris, who goes by Astrologic now, he'll be joining us on Monday. So we'll be like the Three Musketeers. We could consider this a bit of a soft launch, but an official welcome to the show.
Thank you. As always, thank you for having me. That's the most important. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate you taking the risk on your platform to entertain me. And as an introduction to, because I'm strange to anyone watching this, I'm 35, been studying astrology hardcore for the past 10 to 12 years. I've been really deep into psychology for about 10, 12 years. I work in the mental health field. I've been deep in Ashtanga yoga for the past 10, 12 years. And I'm a previous writer for ESPN. I wrote from ESPN from about 2006 to 2009.
So were you like on ESPN, or were you part of one of their little sub platforms?
No, so I was part of the Fantasy Sports platform. So I never had any front facing time. I wrote. It was like 2 to 4 times a week, depending on the schedule. So I wrote NBA, NFL, and MLB.
Right. Were you there in Bristol, or did you work from home?
No, I was telecommuting. Thank God I didn't have to go to Bristol.
Yeah, I know, right? That's like it's like, hey, let's have a major sports network, put it in Bristol, Connecticut.
Yeah.
What a great idea.
It was all telecommuting while I started in high school, so it was pretty cool. They were interested in grooming me for communications broadcast. Like one of my editors, he was like, "Hey, if you're really interested in this, I suggest going into communications." Like yada yada yada. It just didn't work out. I ended up getting into poker, and I'm a very individualistic person, and I made some mistakes and dug myself out of that hole, and here I am.
Yeah, I think we talked about poker a little bit. Like you played like thousands and thousands of hands, right? Mostly online.
Tens of thousands. Yeah.
Yeah. I was, I get obsessed with things, and I went through a poker obsession.
Nice.
I watched a ton of it, right? Like I watched all these guys play on TV, and then occasionally I would go out to a casino and play. In California, they would have like clubs, like poker clubs. So I would go there, and sometimes I would do fairly well, and other times I didn't have enough money to take a lot of bad beats, and some of the bad beats would get under my skin, and I'd walk away from them. But it's I think poker's an amazing game.
I agree. And to put an astrological spin on this for any astrologically fluent folks, I have Mercury and Gemini opposite Mercury. I have Jupiter and Gemini opposite Mercury and Sagittarius. Speculation, the Jupiter energy. So I've noticed I have a gift for getting in like the crest of waves because trading crypto is like the same thing as poker, fantasy sports is the same thing. Like fantasy sports, like players are stocks. Do you buy or sell? So it's all kind of the same world.
Yep. Now we're going to bore the shit out of people here, but I was big into fantasy sports.
Really?
Oh yeah. I I dominated in fantasy football. I was very good at it. Yeah.
That's what's up.
I was always the waiver wire week too early guy.
Ah.
Right? Like, why is he getting this guy? Oh, there's a reason why I'm getting this guy. Right? I know, so I was so obsessed with it. I would call newspapers and try to talk to the beat writers to get a handle on who might be playing. I used to do that.
What?
Yes. Like in different cities, I would call guys up like, hey, what do like some second string running back? Is he going to start this week? Like, what's going on with this dude? And that's how obsessed I was. But I enjoyed it. My teams always did really, really well. And I would play about 5 or 6. I mean, it's minor, but I'd play about 5 or 6 teams at a time. And I really enjoyed like the teams that have like a lot of positions, a lot of flex players. I love playing defensive players. That was great fun.
Yeah, I've experimented with all of that. And one of my proudest moments, this was NBA, not NFL, but I was part of, the ESPN fantasy leagues, the people who worked for ESPN fantasy.
Yeah.
I completely destroyed them. It was so boring how easy it was. I was like, okay.
Wow. So you went in and you just laid waste to these guys?
Yeah. And to be fair, I was young and I was so obsessed, like you were saying. So I was like on it. And I think they were just older, more established and didn't really care. But right. It was like, I want to put money on this. Like, what are we doing here? Like, it's not interesting if we don't have a little money.
Exactly. It's like, we have lives. Go ahead, kid. You can obsess over that third string.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So this is my little claim to fame, although nobody will ever write about this in the annals of fantasy sports. But I used to play in this league where it was a deep league and we had deep teams with lots of flex options. And so once you got your team, the waiver wire was kind of thin. So this was back when LaDainian Tomlinson was playing and running backs were huge. Like, you got to get a running back, When I said to my friends, look, we're pretty low in this draft position. Let's blow off these running backs. And I'm telling you, man, let's just get some stud wide receivers and we can run this thing. So there's the whole 0-0 back draft, right? Which is what's kind of popular now. And that's exactly what we did. In that draft, I got Brandon Marshall, who had an absolute breakout season.
On the Broncos, right?
For Denver. I got Larry Fitzgerald, breakout season. We got, believe it or not, this one guy, he had one incredible year. It was Braylon Edwards for the Browns. Yep. Yeah. And we got Dwayne Bowe for the Chiefs.
Oh, the Chiefs. Yeah, he had like 10 or 12 touchdowns randomly.
That's right. So we got those 4 guys, right? And we were crushing. We were crushing people. But we didn't win that year. I think we came in like second or third. The year that we won, this is like defying the laws of gravity. Our starting quarterbacks were Ryan Fitzpatrick and Matt Castle. And we had to start 2 QBs. And that's the year that Ryan Fitzpatrick was in Buffalo, and he just totally went off. And he had this wide receiver named Stevie Johnson. Mm-hmm. He had one great season, right?
Great possession receiver, yeah.
Yeah, that was the season to have Stevie Johnson, right? So we won our league with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Matt Castle as our QBs. They hated us. And but COVID, man, I had a team with I always played with a buddy, and I'd play some games on the side. But COVID ruined it. The COVID season ruined it for me, and I never went back because you couldn't. This would be a good conversation about betting, and we talked a little about this on chat. But you couldn't form a reasonable lineup, right? Like, it was like Kendrick Bourne supposedly tested positive, and then everybody came in contact with, including Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel. Well, they can't play. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And so they're done, and they'll be fine next week. But okay, what about this week? And then there was the game where all 3 of Denver's quarterbacks tested positive, and they had to run this guy off the practice squad who played quarterback for 1 year in college. And I'm like, this is bullshit. I can't can't play like this, right? And the thing that bothered me was that they left that Denver game on the books. I'm like, you're kidding me. They don't have a quarterback, and you're leaving it on the books. Like, oh, well, who's going to make a little money on the side on this one, right? It's like you should just take the damn game off the books. It's almost unplayable.
Yeah, I feel like that whole season was a cash grab for the NFL, MLB, NBA. It was ridiculous. But tying that into our larger theme of sports betting, I want to say how lucky the NFL is, like, to succeed in fantasy sports or something, because there's so many more injuries. There's so much more attrition in the NFL. So it's the same thing like when we talk about these teams, like, oh, it's week 3, sure, but so much of it is who survives to week 15 in good health.
Right, right. Well, look, I'm from the Bay Area, and you know that. So I'm a Niner fan. George Kittle's hurt today. Charvarius Ward's hurt. Deebo Samuel's out. Like these guys, it's week 3, they're dropping like flies already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
and they play physical styles. So it's how do you account for that? Like George Kittle is one of the most physical tight ends in the league. Deebo Samuel is one of the most physical halfbacks, wideouts, whatever you want to call them in the league. Like, but you can't predict like a soft tissue injury or a hamstring keeping you out 2 to 4 weeks. You just have to be prepared. And then it's like, that's why I like the deep leagues though, because you get disproportionately rewarded for your preparation. If you're like, oh wow, like Brock Purdy, I've watched the tape and he actually is pretty good. And I got an eye on him, like something like that. Like he's leading the league in passing yards right now. Even now, like this year, because like last year there was so much FUD, is what we say, like in crypto. FUD is fear, uncertainty, and doubt about something. There's so much FUD about Purdy. Well, I'm like, Purdy's great. Like even last week, like people were talking about he didn't play that great. Like, he made a couple of insanely difficult throws that few quarterbacks make, and people just, we'll just ignore that and pick on his weaknesses.
Yeah, can we talk about that just a little bit? Like people are dissing that game, and he's playing one of the toughest defenses. Like Brian Flores is a freaking wizard at disguising defenses, right? Like it's an algebra problem. And he's got Christian McCaffrey out, and he still has a really good game, makes a lot of tough throws. He didn't lose the game. They got a muffed punt. They had a blocked punt. And they had all these things that didn't really go in their direction. And then people are throwing shade at him. But he's still leading the league in passing yards and has a higher quarterback rating than Pat Mahomes. So I really would love your insight into this. Is because, like, he's vanilla, he's white, he's from Iowa. Like, is this just like typecasting him?
I think there's so much, like, where you were picked in the NFL. Like, if you look at Lawrence, the quarterback from Jaguars. So what's Trevor? Trevor Lawrence. Like, first overall pick. He looks the part. He looks tall and handsome and strong-armed, and he's been ingrained in the public consciousness since Clemson as this can't miss prospect. And then we see him and we want to make excuses for him. Like, oh, he had Urban Meyer year. Urban Meyer, terrible coach. And well, we're like true greatness elevates the surroundings. LeBron would be great anywhere. You give him the worst coach and the worst teammates, he's going to be great. So I think the safest thing we can say right now is Trevor Lawrence is not great, probably won't be great. Same thing with Sam Darnold, former number 1 overall pick. How many chances after chances, Samuel Darnold. But Brock Purdy, 7th rounder, last pick, like, we're just waiting for the ball to drop. I think that as much as anything. And then you just find excuses. Oh, look how the talent that he has. Look, Kyle Shanahan. There's a lot of quarterbacks that have great talent and they don't execute. So
yeah, it's true. And he's a Capricorn. That's his sun sign. So it's really interesting if you watch his progression. And I'm not sure he's going to get there this year because I think they're just going to be too banged up. And Brandon Ayuk, he was holding out, right? I'm like, okay. For a long time, I thought Brandon Ayuk's a Libra. For whatever reason. And then after he signs, I looked him up. Oh, it's a fucking Pisces. Of course, right? Like, he's holding out. He wants some drama. He wants to be the big fish that eats all the other fish, right? And it's like, dude, you should have got to camp a little bit earlier and got it together, right? But Purdy, he comes in, first year goes to the NFC Championship game, and then he gets his arm tweaked, right? And then the next year he goes to the Super Bowl but loses. So in true Capricornian fashion, the idea would be he would now get to the Super Bowl and then win.
Climb that mountain.
Right, exactly. Lawrence, we were talking about, the sign of Libra today. And Lawrence is a Libra, right? And yeah, man, he has just not lived up to the hype. He's been, like very Libran, very average at best most of the time.
Yeah, and I've been a fan. Like I followed Lawrence, because to me the biggest attraction to the NFL is great quarterback play. That's what will make me tune in. And so I want the greatness. And to be fair, the Jaguars, they don't have the wide receiver talent of a lot of teams, but they have enough. They have like decent wideout talent. So we'll see. But I mean, I try to be more compassionate and patient than I used to be like 10 years ago, because like Sam Darnold, again, is a perfect example. So much of like, if you're not an elite quarterback, then almost everything is like kind of situational for you. So you're looking for a coach, a scheme that you can really buy into. And like Derek Carr, 2 weeks in, perfect example. Like he's looking like the best quarterback in the NFL because he can buy into the scheme. And like there was the Ben Solak article on ESPN that highlighted this really aggressive deep throw that Derek Carr threw. And if you know anything about football, like to the viewer, Derek Carr is like the most conservative quarterback in the NFL. So I was shocked. And Ben Solak made the salient point that this is because he's buying in to the coaching and to the scheme. Right.
And you made a point, you were sharing this with me on Twitter, that Clint Kubiak is now the offensive coordinator there, who comes out of the Shanahan tree. And it's like life, man. Like you have to have the right conditions for everything, right? In order to really take root and blossom. And, Carr's been kicked around and abused a little bit since he's been in the NFL. And now he's got the situation. And Dennis Allen, who was the coach of the Raiders at one point in time, didn't do a great job, but he always had this reputation of being a really good defensive coordinator. And he seems like, at the very least, he's steady. Right, like some of these coaches can get really mercurial, but he seems steady enough to like hold it together. And there's a ton of talent there in New Orleans on the offensive side of the ball. Like Olave's like a star waiting to happen. I don't know where Kamara got those 4 touchdowns last week. What's your take on him? Do you think Alvin has enough juice left to have a?
I'm not sure. Because he's benefiting from incredible offensive line play right now. He's getting untouched a lot. Like, so any back is going to look good when I don't get touched 2-3 yards down the line of scrimmage. So my thing with Kamara, I want him to be healthy. Like he's another person that is really explosive, soft tissue injuries, kind of gets banged up. So and the Saints, they need all this offensive talent. I started looking into the wideout Rashid Shaheed, the third year. ESPN isn't even telling me what he was drafted at. Maybe he's undrafted. I don't know, but he's been dynamite. He's got
he's been coming on, right? He's been really coming on.
Big play, like because one of the things that's important to look at for wideouts is the average yards of reception. If it's over about like 15, then that's a deep threat. He's averaging 17 yards a catch in his career. So, okay, then I can open up the deep threat for Olave to come through work the middle of the field, have Kamara to mix it up, and toss that in with good scheming, non-mistakes, non-turnovers from the quarterback, and their defense is dominant. And here we go. Like, what happens?
Nugs, who is into pigskin, said Shaheed is a UDFA. So there you go.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
Yeah. Alvin Kamara in his first 2 seasons was electric. I mean, that guy was really amazing to watch. And had him on my fantasy team, too. I think they're going to be tough, man. I think the Saints are going to be hard to handle. And in that same division, you've got the Bucs, who I think are also going to be hard to handle. And what's interesting, and again, this is just topical astrology, but you got 2 Aries quarterbacks in that division with Baker Mayfield and Derek Carr, guys that are used to adversity. and having to overcome things, right? And keep moving forward. And I love Baker. I've always been a Baker guy, and now he's in the right place again. Setting. He's got Mike Evans. He's got Chris Godwin. He's got some other guys there, and I've always thought that Todd Bowles was underrated as a coach. Like he wasn't spectacular in New York, but again, he's steady, right? And I watched Todd Bowles play when he was a player, and Todd Bowles was vicious. Like he could hit.
Was he a linebacker or what?
He was Todd Bowles played safety. And now we're like into like year 5 with Byron Leftwich as an offensive coordinator, and I think it's an interesting story, right? Like, he learned some Bruce Arians, who was a great offensive mind. And
one of the best.
Yeah. And now, 2 weeks in a row, they've lit it up. And that's another team that I think people are going to have to keep their eye on. They beat the Lions too.
Yeah, the Lions are a Super Bowl favored by a lot of cognoscenti. What the commonality I see between the Bucks and the Saints is institutional competency that I think the most popular and NFL cognoscenti underrate, because the cap geeks or your NFL geeks, you look at the Bucks, you look at the Saints, you're like, oh, they're in cap hell. How do they get talent? Like the Saints have been in cap hell for like literally 10 years. And so everyone's waiting for the ball to drop, Well, how does it keep going? It starts with the ownership, and the coaching is allowed to implement or make changes on a stable process. Like that's Sean Payton's fundamental offense. That goes back to 2006. Bruce Arians, how far does he go back? He goes back to at least the early 2010s, if not earlier. I would need to look it up. And so that if you have guys like, I don't think Mayfield and Carr, they're never going to be top 5 talent quarterbacks, but you can get a top 5 season out of an average quarterback. You can get top 5 production. That doesn't mean that they're all of a sudden top 5, and that's what their franchises, their coaching is showing them capable of. Yep.
So where are you on college ball? Are you fluent enough to?
I don't know anything about college ball. It's always been a weakness of mine.
Okay, so nice to throw that out there. So yeah, the front offices are really important.
I'm willing to learn, by the way. Like.
Okay.
I'm like, as far as like pipelines.
Yeah.
So, cause like I'm aware, like, right. For example, I was watching the Aaron Hernandez Hulu documentary, and it's a big deal over him going to Connecticut. Yeah. It was UConn that his dad wanted versus the University of Florida, like the Florida powerhouses.
Right.
So that's kind of how my mind works, is I want the lineage. Like, where did you come from? Who nurtured you? Who associates themselves with you? And then how do you perform when it's showtime.
Right. So let's bookmark the Hernandez conversation, and we'll get there because I think it's a really interesting topic, and fascinating and tragic in so many ways. All right, so we're talking about the NFC South. Apparently, the Falcons pulled out a win against the Eagles last week, right? It was Monday night. The Falcons are one of these teams that has a lot of talent, right? I think they have talent. I think Bijan Robinson, a running back, he can play. Drake London, wide receiver, he's good. Maybe Kyle Pitts will wake up one day and figure out he's all right.
Kyle Pitts, by the way, just to briefly interrupt you, he reminds me a lot of Vernon Davis.
I was going to say he's Vernon Davis. You took the words right out of my mouth. He's Vernon Davis 2.0. And I like Vernon.
I always loved Vernon Davis. We were just waiting for him to put it together. It's like nobody could be this talented and work hard and not put it together.
So my fantasy with Vernon Davis was to turn him into a bigger turbocharged version of Deebo Samuel, because he could run with the ball, run him out of the backfield. Vernon's I won't call it a problem. Vernon didn't like to get hit. He was not into being tackled hard, even though he had one of the hardest tackles, I think, by Cam Chancellor, who knocked him silly. But I like Vernon. He's also an artist, right? He's a painter, right?
Wow.
And his brother died, right? Mysteriously last year. Vontae, cornerback. Like,
oh yeah, he was a Pro Bowl cornerback too.
He had a couple really good seasons. And the thing about Vontae, it was really trippy, is that he retired in the middle of a game. Right? He's like, I'm done. I'm done with football. And he just walked out of the locker. I mean, he did like an Antonio Brown, only he wasn't like ostentatious about it. He just walked out of the locker room. He was done. That was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
By the way, I have to compliment you on how on it you are with NFL. You definitely know the details better than I do with NFL. So I'm playing, and just for the audience, I'm playing catch up a bit. Since I stopped working at ESPN and sports betting a lot, I've slowly, like, my knowledge has deteriorated, my interest has deteriorated. I follow along, like, don't obviously, right? But like the supernatural recall of all the nuances. Thank you, because steel sharpens steel, and that inspires me, Mars and Aries, to step it up.
There you go, man. There you go. Yeah, I mean, I've got way too much time in my hands sometimes.
But yeah, but adding on to the Davis thing, I didn't know that he died this April. Like, what? Yeah,
really. And I remember seeing video of Vontae talking like about when he retired and so on. He just seemed like a really nice, sweet dude, right? Like, you could just tell, like, he didn't have a mean bone in his body, and it's just weird, watching him like just go out like that. Vernon is a really talented guy. He's a painter, he likes to paint. He's actually quite good.
Wow.
So I think there's like
what's
this
his sign?
He's Aquarius. Vernon Davis Aquarius. So I think there's some sensitivity like threads that run through that Davis family. And it's wow. It's interesting you had the same take on Pitts. But I think they have talent. Now, Raheem Morris is a coach. That's a whole other story. I don't know what they got there.
I respect that because I like how you're challenging my implicit assumptions of what I've just swallowed propagandize wise of, the NFC is a lot weaker than the AFC, especially the NFC South. You're talking about the division that has been routinely shattered on for the better part of the last decade. And so I like how you're challenging me to pay more attention and check my priors, which I'm going to do this weekend for sure.
Well, you could leave Carolina out of that discussion. Although Andy Dalton, he's a Scorpio. You can't kill him. Right?
I love Andy Dalton. Yeah. I know.
Right? The redheaded rifle, right? Is that what they call him or something like that? Yeah, he's a Scorpio. He's just resurrected again. And so what are your thoughts on Bryce Young? What do you think's going on there?
Ownership. It always starts top from top to the bottom. So look, I don't care how bad your franchise quarterback is. When you pay this much for him, it's two kind of arguments. One, you're like, you paid this much for him, you have to support him through 2 seasons. And if like that means David Carr type seasons, like David Carr and the Houston Texans, just getting sacked more than anyone ever, potentially shell shocking you the career. Okay, whatever. So be it. That's the cost that we paid, and we need to commit to it. The other line is he's been so bad in that they're going to lose the locker room, or the locker room's already lost if you keep playing him, that you have to make a change. Either way, you failed. Like you simply cannot have the first option between the 2 quarterbacks and pick the wrong one. Like, so you failed. Your franchise is set back like 5 years.
It's like taking Ryan Leaf over Peyton Manning.
Exactly.
Right?
It's a laughingstock for the next decade.
Okay, so this is an interesting point because the owner of the Panthers is this guy, David Tepper. Mm-hmm. And he was a big time like hedge fund guy and made a bunch of fuck you money. And the way that the whole thing with the Panthers was really weird, right? Like they had Jerry Richardson, who was the owner, played in the NFL. He basically got Me Too'd, and they forced him to sell the team. And Tepper, who had a minority interest in the Steelers, sold that, bought the Panthers, and is incredibly impatient. And I've heard that who was the coach of Frank Reich? Frank Reich was the coach. And Frank Reich wanted C.J. Stroud. He wanted C.J. Stroud. And David Tepper wanted Bryce Young. Like, that was David Tepper's call. So, to your point, right, like, culture. You have a meddling owner who think for whatever reason, maybe because he's an Alabama guy or whatever, he's going to draw the crowds. He's going to bring the crowds in because it's somewhat close to Alabama. I don't know. Terrible call. So.
Yep. Whenever that's like classic new owner syndrome, where someone the Dunning-Kruger fallacy. Oh, you made a bunch of money in this field, so you think that you're above average in this other separate field. Yeah. And so you meddle. Like if you're like the best owner, like you're a pocketbook and you're smart enough, you have enough cross-disciplinary experience, intelligence to hire the right people, build the right team, and then you let them do their job.
Right.
That's all leadership, though, right?
That's exactly. And not everybody, like, I mean, somebody like Tepper, who is probably like just uber aggressive in the market, right? And he's, to your point, he just thinks that all those skills are just transferable, and they're not. You and I have talked about eclipses a lot, and Biocharisma brought this up. Because Tua is a Pisces. Do you think the lunar eclipse in Pisces has caused Tua's murkiness? I think it's an interesting question, and he's obviously been known for concussions, and so he has a concussion. Right, kind of on the heels of this lunar eclipse in Pisces. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Let me look up his birth chart. And as I'm doing that, the astrology mind in me is wondering how close was the eclipse to his sun. So I'm trying to find the degree of his sun.
Yep.
So let's say it's about, okay, it's because we're on radio. That's this terrible radio. Let's say it's close enough to be in right. In general, when you get eclipses on your sun, health is a big problem because eclipse is blocking out the light of the sun, and the sun is the key symbol of vitality. So that makes perfect sense. I would need to do some more digging.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. Yeah, I mean, like obviously you're right. Like that's going to be a big part, like no matter what. So, good point. Good contribution.
I'm gonna just look it up real. Let me see if I can figure this out. Because sometimes you can get a chart, but it's not always going to be with an ascendant. Yeah, so it's not there. When's his date of birth?
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. He's March 2nd, 1998.
So he's going to be very close to that eclipse, right? So 10 degrees, right? 10 degrees Pisces, roughly. And that eclipse was at 16, 17. Is that right?
No, the eclipse was at 25.
25. Okay, so it wasn't that close. Wasn't that close. But in the same zip code.
Yeah, because the nature of eclipses, we're starting 1.5 years of eclipses in the pair of signs, Pisces and Virgo. So, okay, I fired up something of his chart. He has Mars at 28 Pisces. So, bingo.
Wow. That's interesting. So what do you, and Mars is also Aries ruled ahead. What do you think is in store for Tua? I mean, are they gonna play this out? Are they gonna force? I mean, this is weird territory. This is like Steve Young, but much younger, like way younger.
I get the feeling he's gonna keep trying. He's gonna play this out. I just say that because from the last time this happened, his quotes had no doubt whatsoever. He was like, never in a second did I think about not trying to come back. He's from a football family. He's got the contract. You got at least 2 years to get, your guaranteed money. Like if you retire,
he just signed a huge deal.
I know, but if he retires from concussions, he's not going to get maybe 20% of that, 40% of that. Now, I might be speaking out of my butt. I'd have to look at, Spotrac, whatever. But in general, that's how it works. Like, so, and the Dolphins are just as incentivized to keep it going. Like what they're screwed. Like this is a team that's positioned to win the title. So
yeah. Do you think that the media and the NFL has become oversensitized to CTE, or do you think that they've got the right take on this?
I feel like the NFL doesn't care about CTE. It just kind of touches on the Aaron Hernandez thing again, where why I care about the Aaron Hernandez thing, aside from loving watching him play in those Patriot teams, they were amazing, is it speaks to a lot, but it speaks to the level of depravity and cognitive dissonance that on some level we all must engage with to enjoy this gladiator sport. And whenever the ramifications are right in front of our face, like a Tua situation, it challenges that cognitive dissonance. And it's like, oh, where are you now? How is this the same? Like, you know what I mean? And this just like this collective shock about it. You know, like there's like, to me, I sense a collective reticence to even have this conversation.
Yeah. Well, clearly there are some people who will chime in. Like Stephen A. Smith will say, it's time for him to retire. Right, without having a conversation, they'll just go on full blast. But it's the whole cognitive dissonance side of enjoying this is, I mean, it's not even something that most people really think about, right? Like there's just a lot of denial around kind of what goes into it. Like steroids are still a really big deal, and I'm not anti-steroid, by the way.
Me neither.
It's like, you know what? They play a rough, dangerous sport, and their bodies need to recover, whatever. And we live in a drug-addled society anyway. So, like, just, you know, make it work. Make it work. Yeah.
As long as it's like that, to me, that's between you and your health. That has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
It's me as an enjoyer, I want peak performance, period.
Yeah. Like, and all those guys who were juicing during, you know, the steroid era in baseball, it's like, you take the invisible asterisk off their name and just deal with it. Just deal with it. They were great.
Like the whole Aaron Judge having like the best offensive season since prime Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
Like, Barry Bonds, that happened. And he did that against steroid pitchers in steroid competition.
That's right.
Because competition is always relative. So. Right.
That's a great point, because there were pitchers. People just thought, oh, it's just the hitters. No, the pitchers were juicing too. Because
you can't tell like Roger Clemens, 42.
Oh my, right. Andy Pettit, you know. I mean, they were. I mean, they were getting velo, but they could also pitch longer, and on fewer days rest. So I miss the old days though, when those guys all took greenies.
Remember? I remember reading that in Sports Illustrated and that being so normal. And I remember reading it as a kid, and I wanted to take greenies. I was like 15.
Right. Give me the caffeinated coffee, because the decaf was the real coffee, right? So what do you know about Bo Nix? Any word is asking you about the potential for Bo Nix as a quarterback. What are your thoughts?
I don't know enough. Let me look it up.
Well, Bo Nix played college football forever, I think, right? Like 5 or 6 years.
He's old. He's way too old, bro. Come on. 24, second, 12th overall pick. He's a huge underdog to do anything. Like what was that dude from? I'm sure he's better than, was it Wensky from Florida State? But old, because like a big part of projections for sports.
Chris Weinke.
Chris Weinke. Thank you. I don't even know what I said.
Chris Weinke was like, he was like 26 years old, winning the Heisman Trophy. Come on, man.
So essentially, when you can be old, like Damian Lillard from the NBA, he was old when he came into the NBA, but you have to immediately perform if you're older than your peers. And right now, he's not performing, so it doesn't look good.
So what's his name? Zach, what's his name? The backup, played for the Jets, first overall.
Oh, Zach Wilson.
I think Zach Wilson can play. I think he can play. And I think if Bo Nix doesn't catch fire in the next 3 to 4 weeks, you'll see Zach Wilson under center. And I don't know if Sean Payton, will have the patience for Zach Wilson. But I saw him make too many spectacular plays in college. And even when the Jets just feel doomed. And there were even a few games with the Jets that he looked pretty decent.
I'm quietly bullish on the Jets. And
right now.
Yeah, and because I love Aaron Rodgers. I've always loved Aaron Rodgers.
What do you like about him? What do you love about Aaron Rodgers?
As a player, first of all, he's great. I love greatness. He's great.
Right. Yeah.
Decision making. And this, I wanted to touch on this briefly with Brock Purdy. The measure of a quarterback is the quality, the consistent quality of your decision making.
Yes.
Rodgers. So when Rodgers came back, I watched last week's game very closely. Okay, sure, he's not going to be able to move as much. I want to know two things. One, does he still have similar arm talent, and how is his decision making? Rodgers is famed. He went a very long time with like very low interception rate, one of the lowest in history. I know he had some streak on it, like in his prime. As long as he maintains that, the Jets still have talent. Now they need another wideout. They need another playmaker or something. But they have enough talent to where I'm not just writing them off. And tonight's game is important. The Patriots have a lot. Because here's the thing about the NFL. The NFL, it's essentially like maybe 5 teams that are significantly above the rest in any given year. And then it's like 15 teams that can beat any of them any other week. And then there's like another 5 to 8 teams that are just terrible. And I think the Patriots and the Jets, they're jockeying for, they're like somewhere between the 20th and the 10th best team. I don't think either of them is likely to be better than the 10th best team at the end of the season. But if the Jets are the 11th best team and we enter the flippant playoffs, like why not? We saw the Giants do it with Eli Manning.
Right, just get in. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers is really, I think he's fascinating. And, I was living in California when he was playing at Cal. And
ooh, lucky you.
I was living in Southern California, and because we'd moved to San Diego. I moved to San Diego. But there was a game, and he was playing, I think Deshaun Jackson might have been on the team. They were playing USC, and he set the record for most consecutive passes thrown in an NC2A Division I game. And this is against Pete Carroll's Trojans. And I'm like, this dude is really good, right? He's like incredibly accurate. He can see the field. He moves well. And then, I don't know if you know the story about this, 49ers had the first pick in the draft that year. Mm-hmm. And they're just coming out of like sort of the Jeff Garcia era, and they're trying to replace Jeff Garcia. So Mike Nolan, who was a terrible coach, mm-hmm. and I remember when they were trying to hire a new coach, like, please, anybody but this guy, not him, and they hire him, right? So he asked Aaron Rodgers to do some things, and Aaron Rodgers refused to do them. And I think one of the things he asked Aaron Rodgers to do, I swear to God, was to dribble a football. And Aaron Rodgers, I'm not going to do that. That has nothing to do with being a quarterback. So Alex Smith, who's a nice guy, right? He's a Taurus. He dribbled the freaking football, and that was enough. That was enough. They made him the first pick. I was so pissed. I
remember that year, not as vividly as you do, at least in certain parts, because I was a kid. I grew up a big Niners fan, so I love Jeff Garcia. I love Alex Smith. I love Aaron Rodgers. I remember, like, didn't he get drafted really late? Wasn't he like 25th overall or something?
He was fuming, man. He was in the green room.
24th overall. Yeah, he should have been like first overall. It was like ridiculous. And and your story reminds me that Rodgers is recalcitrant. And so if he doesn't respect you, well, he's like, fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a Sagittarius. And
that's why I love him.
Well, he tells it like it is. The thing that I found really interesting about him is that there was a period of Aaron Rodgers when he was in Green Bay, and he was kind of woke, right? I remember seeing him in this commercial with Pharrell. And it was like this weird commercial where they're all sitting at a boardroom, and it's like we're here, we're ruling the future, and it had this kind of woke vibe. And Aaron Rodgers is there. I'm like, so Aaron Rodgers is woke, and then all of a sudden, he's fucking doing ayahuasca and talking about 9/11, right? I'm like, I love this dude, He flipped his script.
See, I'm glad you said that because I didn't know, like when he started. Like when he was on Rogan or like with the Pat McAfee and he began to make headlines in the COVID, I was wondering where it came from. Because I just thought it was, I didn't know this dude and he decided to become more known to the public. And so I didn't know that that makes sense though, because he was born in Chico, he was born in the same city that my soulmate was born in. He went to the community college that my soulmate went to. So I'm familiar with that.
You went to Butte.
Butte Community College,
yeah,
which is in Chico. So that's a super hippie. You're going to get inculcated in the California propaganda.
And Party City, Chico's Party City too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's a fun city. Bear Hole.
Yeah. So yeah, he's like, I'm not gonna bounce your stupid football. Yeah, I think he's really fascinating. What do you think of this comment? This is interesting. Did you see the undercover video of the NFL exec saying that Bountygate was a cover-up for opiate dealing inside the Saints organization? Wow.
No.
Wow.
Did this come out?
Wow. That's a really interesting comment because I always felt like Bountygate was bullshit. Like, this is bullshit. I didn't know what the real story was, but it's like all these teams in the NFL basically have those conversations, right? Like, Like, hey, we're going to take this guy out. We're going to take, right? It's like not uncommon, at least back then. But what's interesting about that comment is that I remember, I think Sean Payton, didn't he have to go through some form of recovery from opiates? Nugs, can you?
Yeah, I'm almost sure. Wow.
Nugs, can you confirm that?
I'm looking it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Payton had. I think Payton had some issues with, was it Percocet or something like that, right? I think that was happening with him. Let's see. Payton has been careful with Knicks. His ball is good. His INTs weren't the worst situation. Knicks gas wheels. Sutton got to step up soon for Knicks. Wilson's a good backup. Knicks.
Wow, look at this. From 2010, Pro Football Talk on Friday, former Saints director of security Jeffrey Santini sued the team for constructive discharge. He alleges that GM Mickey Loomis attempted to cover up evidence that Vicodin was being abused and or stolen from the team drug locker room by 2 senior staff members. Wow.
Right. I think one of them was Sean Payton.
Yeah, they don't disclose who the 2 senior staff members are, so very well could be.
Interesting. I mean, I always thought that Bountygate thing. I mean, look, you're gonna suspend Payton for a year. Like, a lot of these scandals are they're okay. A lot of times in sports, there's a cover story and then there's the real story about what's really happening. And so when Joe Montana was playing for the 49ers, there was this story that he had hurt his back and couldn't play for like 6 games or 7 games or whatever. Well, I knew people in the Bay Area who worked at restaurants and would comment that Joe Montana and Dwight Clark and some of the other Niners were avid skiers, right? So they were doing a lot of nose candy back then. And I think what probably happened is that Montana blew one of his drug tests. And it's like, okay, you're going to sit down for 6 weeks because you like, at that time, the league could not afford to have Joe Montana blow positive. Like, it's unfortunate. Like, they have some other poor bastard who's not the star of the league, but Montana, no, you're not going to be busted for it. So you'll have a back injury for 6 weeks. It's kind of like wrestling in that regard. And I think a lot of this happens. It happens in sports. There's like the story, which is the cover story, and then whatever the real story is. Absolutely,
because you have to protect the shield, protect the integrity. When the brand becomes bigger than anything else. So of course, Tim Donaghy in the NBA, like, come on, that's so obvious. What else did you say? This reminded me of, I forgot. But LeBron James, like, nothing's come out about him. I think that's suspicious in and of itself. Like, he's a Capricorn, obviously super powerful.
Right.
To me, obviously on steroids, obviously on HGH. Dwayne Wade, probably obviously on HGH. Allegedly, because I'm not trying to get sued by anybody, allegedly. So what do you expect? Like, you got to keep the money. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. Tennis has a steroid problem.com is an old blog that would go into immaculate detail over Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, and then later Djokovic, and their potential steroid use. Like, of course, it's all over the place. That's why I'm like going back to our earlier thing. Like, let's let PEDs be legal. You know,
I agree.
Like, what's the big deal?
I agree. I totally agree. This is back in the old days. I don't know. You might, it's like the 2010s. There was a lot of really early, like underground hip hop. When I say underground, I'm not talking like, conscious hip hop, but tales from the dark side of hip hop with insiders. And like Rick Griffin, from Public Enemy, and some other people. Some of them were anonymous, right? And one of the things, it was a video. Was it a video or a story? It was around that time, and they were talking about LeBron James. And the story said that LeBron James went to the parties, but he didn't go to all the freaky parties, right? Like they were sort of, they had him on training wheels. So he wasn't going to the Diddy parties, but he was definitely exposed to that world. I don't know where he is with it now, but that was what I was hearing back in the day, that he was in, but not so in that it was like subterranean.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense to me, because when I mentioned earlier he's a Capricorn, two things that are embedded in Capricorn Sun's ambition and compartmentalization. To me, they're the best sign in the zodiac at compartmentalizing.
I think Capricorn, by and large, is an underrated sign. I mean, if I was going to incarnate into this Earth realm, I'd want to have an Earth sign so I could like deal with it and roll with it. And Capricorn is it's at the top of the food chain. Mm-hmm. And getting back to, you mentioned his name, Eli Manning. He's a Capricorn, right? Like, but the thing about Eli, nothing phases him.
Exactly.
And you get this with Capricorns. Like Joe Flacco's a Capricorn. Like Joe Flacco's implacable. And nothing bothers Eli Manning. It's like Drew Brees, Capricorn. And these guys they're cool under pressure. and they have a plan. They've got a plan. Right?
Brock Purdy, another Capricorn.
He's another Brock's got Mars in Aquarius, though. I think he's a bit of a gambler. And I think that Mars in Aquarius can be, high risk, high reward kind of a deal.
It's interesting you say that. I'm learning. I'm like Mars in Aquarius. Getting nailed down into that is on my to-do list for reasons we can talk about privately. But I'll keep an eye on that.
So we got a celebrity partier here. Brigitte O'Higgins confirming Joe Montana story right here. Let me see if I can go back into the comments. And she said, let's see, where is it? She said, I did, and Joe M lived in the neighborhood. So California is like a small town. It is. So she's kind of confirming bit of the Joe Montana story there. And then she said, party with the likes of Jeff Beck, total gentleman. And you know Jeff Beck, the guitar player? Oh, dude, he shreds. He's so good. He passed away last year. It was such a loss. He's an incredible guitar player. Brandy says, I think Capricorn climbed the mountain and step on people as they go upward. But they do say, excuse me. Right?
No, they don't. What are you talking about?
Richard Nixon would have. He would have said, excuse me. That's funny. No, they don't. Kabuki Bo says, Robert, I agree. Susie's son is he's like a high school football player stud. He's a Capricorn. That's cool. All right. Who else you been watching a little bit let's talk about the Chiefs. I was like on this Chiefs curse all offseason because they were just a fucking shit show after the Super Bowl. Everything was going wrong for these guys. And they managed to pull out 2 games now. I don't know, man. I don't get a good vibe from the Chiefs this year.
I'm with you. And when you mentioned that on Twitter or X, I thought that was interesting because I think you're on to something. The Chiefs they won 2 games, but excuse me, I follow DVOA a lot from Aaron Schatz, formerly Football Outsiders. Long story short, they don't look very good in DOA so far, and they don't have the talent that they used to have. Like they've still never replaced Tyreek Hill, and Kelsey's old, and yeah, he's keeping it going, but he's an injury risk.
Something happened. Like Taylor Swift stole his soul. Like he doesn't even look like the same guy, right? He's got this weird little Ford mustache from the 70s.
Non-existent this year.
Like last 2 years, he's no show. Total
39 yards over 2 games. Like, yeah. So again, what I said earlier about the average yards to catch, his average yards to catch plummeted last year. It went from his career's 12.5 yards to catch. Last year is 10.6. He's never been below 11. He's never been below 12 yards to catch. So when that happens to an athlete, that suggests they're losing explosiveness. And yeah, he's never been the most explosive player. But when that means if you lose anything, then you're just a statue? Like
you're a mustachue.
So unless Rashee Rice becomes a star, which he very well may be, but I don't think he's a star. I think he's a solid number 2, masquerading as a number 1.
They signed Kareem Hunt, so Hunt's back on the trail in Kansas City.
Did they really? Are you kidding?
Yeah, no, he's back with the Chiefs, and he was one of those guys I had drafted when he was busting out in fantasy. I drafted him.
I always liked him.
So I'm gonna have a very unpopular opinion on this. He got kicked out of the league for a while because of what happened in the hotel room. It wasn't in the room; it was in the hallway, right? And so the story is that they got this room, they're doing their thing, whatever, right? And this girl's there, and she won't leave. She won't leave. She's causing a scene. I don't know what's going on between her ears, but basically he physically ejected her and forced her out of the room. And he got a little overzealous with his leg. But you know, it's like anytime you see violence towards women in our society, right? It is going to be not a yellow flag; it's a red flag. And especially coming off of Ray Rice.
Exactly. Right?
Like, and I'm not going to make excuses for the dude, but you don't know what went on in those 4 walls before all that happened. And anyway, that was his downfall for a while. And then he got signed again. I mean, he got back on the squad, but now he's back with Kansas City. What are your thoughts? Does he have anything left in the tank? Do you think he'll make a difference?
That's what we'll see. Most likely, no. He's 29. He's done nothing in a couple of years, like below 4.0 yards per carry. In the Chiefs offense, as a running back, I need at least 4.2 yards a carry out of you. And ideally, I want 4.5 or more because you're playing with Patrick Mahomes. So
right.
Like the Chiefs need a running game. Like that's the only way for this dink and dunk Kelsey greatness thing to work. And I don't really think it's going to work. They need reinforcements. Like you can't just siphon away talent and survive in the NFL. Like it's just not going to happen. Like trade. There's no like aggressive trades they've done. Like they're just relying entirely on Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce.
Right. Well, they signed Hollywood Brown, who I never got as a player.
Yeah, me neither. He's so overrated. Like
he's diminutive. He may be fast. He doesn't have great hands. He's not a route runner. So what
exactly.
He's Marquise Goodwin with a better name. You know, it's like
and when you say like he's not a route runner, that's what I don't like about the Chiefs building. Like Patrick Mahomes is a pinpoint receiver. Like you give him a route runner, you give him Wes Welker, you know, we're getting first downs all day long.
Well, I'll tell you who's a free agent, and I'm not sure why nobody signed him, but this is the guy that he could use to shred. It's Hunter Renfrow. Hunter Renfrow is a free agent.
I love Hunter Renfrow.
Hunter Renfrow is great. I think he's really underrated, and he's just sitting there on the free agent pile.
And he blocks too.
He can block. Yeah, he can definitely block. So that's a guy. If I was Andy Reid, I'd sign him in a heart. He's tough, right? Like he's one of those tough guys that he'll take a hit and it'll get the team fired up.
Yeah, I wonder with him, I would worry about the physicalness. He had that great season in 2021, which don't ask me why. I watched a lot of Raiders that year. Don't know why. It seems like he's really struggled with health since then because the way he plays is so physical. That's the big danger with these kind of undersized physical possession receivers. Yeah. When you're beat up, you're done.
Yeah. I think he might still have some tread on Osiris, but we'll see. I think the Chiefs are in trouble. I think Denver is kind of an enigma. They got to work this Bo Nix thing out. So that leaves us with the Raiders and the Chargers in the West, and we got crazy fucking Jim Harbaugh now as the coach of the Chargers, and Harbaugh's a Capricorn, and he's got Uranus and Pluto in Virgo in the first house, and he's good for about 4 seasons, and that Uranus kicks in his first house, and he implodes. And whenever he leaves an organization, it's usually worse off, right? Like look at Michigan, Niners, Michigan. They're in tatters. Michigan's in tatters, but he's like a freaking, like 1,000-watt jumpstart battery. Like this guy can get things going.
Changes the organization. He introduces competency.
Yes, good. That's a great, and accountability too, right? Like competency and accountability. And then he brings Greg Roman with him. And I mean, I think he's underwhelming for Lamar Jackson. I think they probably should have kept Greg Roman, but he brings Roman with him wherever he goes. So, what do you think? Do you think the Chargers will get enough of an updraft with their slim pool of talent in General Harbaugh leading the troops to make a dent here?
I've always liked J.K. Dobbins a lot. He's extremely talented. He just can't stay healthy. If dude stays healthy, I like their run game.
Yeah.
I like Gus Edwards too, but that's the thing. That's the kind of again, we keep going back to attrition. If you're going to play ground and pound in the NFL, you need 2 good running backs, and
at least two.
Mm-hmm.
So Dobbins and Edwards both played in Baltimore.
Yep.
With
those great run schemes. That was his brother, right? So obviously he knows they're coachable.
That's Mark Roman. Mark Roman does that. So he was the OC.
But I mean, Harbaugh was the coach of the Ravens. His brother.
Yeah.
So they have this connection. Huh?
Okay. I think the dark horse in that division is the Raiders. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but Gardner Minshew.
Oh my God.
Gardner Minshew is going to be a cult hero this year. Gardner Minshew in Vegas, and what's this guy's name? Antonio Pierce or Angelo? What's his Pierce? I think it's Angelo Pierce. He used to play. I think linebacker.
Oh, Antonio Pierce, the linebacker. Yeah. So, like that. Do you know the story about him? Like he's like crazy in debt. Do you know that story? No.
All right. So this is just nuts, man. This guy owes millions of dollars, and a lot of it is to his ex-wife. But then he took out a loan to pay off his ex-wife, and he owes a bunch of money on this loan. Like, you want to talk about somebody who's vulnerable to gambling? It's the Raiders coach, and he's fucking coaching in Las Vegas. Okay.
Oh wow, that's a great point. Wow.
Like this is a total setup. But he's motivated and he's hungry. So who knows? Maybe he can do something with fire these guys up.
That's a great point, though. He's getting predatory offers.
Of course he is. He's a vulnerable. So I don't understand. Like, if you're Mark Davis, why don't you just pay off his debt, and then he can incrementally pay you back? Right?
It's illegal. That's why they won't.
It's illegal.
They won't let you do that.
Yeah.
Got to go, behind the scenes. That's like Joe Smith, Timberwolves, or Udonis
Joe
Haslem,
Smith.
Heat.
Oh, don't remind me of Joe Smith. The Warriors freaking drafted Joe Smith with the first pick in the draft, and you could have had Kevin Garnett. Okay, bad move, Warriors. Bad move. Joe, his nickname was the Animal. There was nothing animal about Joe Smith.
He's very average.
I watched that guy play for 15 years, and there was no animal about him. Like, he was average. The name suited him perfectly. So did they pay him behind the scenes? Is that what happened?
Yeah, they tried to anyway. They got caught.
Yeah. Listen, I'm gonna disagree with Nugs on this. Mustache Minshew is still a cult sensation in my eyes.
Yeah,
I agree with him on that. Yeah.
I'm gonna let you hang yourself on Minshew, and
Okay.
hey, if you're right, you're gonna get all the glory because it's just gonna be you on Minshew Island.
That's me. Me and my bro, Turner.
I think
Gardner
Minshew's a
Minshew.
totally fine backup quarterback. If he is starting for you for 16 plus games, you're done.
There's probably some truth to that. There's probably some. I'm not even sure who else they have.
They don't have nobody. Like
the two tight ends. The two tight ends. Those guys are good. Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer. Right. That gets back to your Aaron Hernandez, Rob Gronkowski offense.
I got to pay attention to that. I don't know about Bowers, and wow, yeah, they're high draft picks. They're recent. I love the two tight ends because tight end is like the hardest position in the NFL to play aside from quarterback. It's if you look, I pay attention to tight ends that come in. Like, there's no such thing as a good rookie tight end in general. Very few exceptions. Sam Laporta or whatever.
Absolutely.
Because you have to block and receive, and you have to know all the pass protections. Like, you have to know so much and be physical.
Right. I think George Kittle and some of these other guys started this like tight end U. So they have this thing where these guys who play tight end go and get coached up specifically for tight end. You get the right tight end, and they could be matchup nightmares.
Exactly.
Just total matchup nightmares.
The Saints are doing that a lot. The Solak article talked a lot of the double tight end because we were talking about this on X. It's anti-metagame, essentially. The metagame is all about passing. So if like the base defense is nickel is 5 cornerbacks on the field, then you're susceptible to runs. So how can I punish that? Well, I need tight ends and I need to play jumbo. Or if I'm in a 2 tight end set, that nickel's off the field. Now I have linebackers. So if my tight ends are agile and athletic and they can get in the seam and they can get behind the linebackers, bam, play action. I can get that 20-yard dig. I can get that little post, depending on how athletic my tight end is. And then if you can do that, then you can make the ground and pound work because you're going to control the possession.
Yeah,
you're going to have Minshew. Minshew's not going to turn the ball over unnecessarily.
He doesn't really turn the ball over. He's not a turnover machine, right? Like he's sort of a Brock Purdy light in some ways.
Mm-hmm. I like that because it's putting institutional infrastructure behind the team. So then, all right, maybe Minshew, we get an upgrade next year. We get Darnold or Cousins or I don't know, whatever. Then you still have the same infrastructure and they just have to execute the game plan on a higher level. Right.
The other thing with tight ends too is that if you get a tight end who's big and athletic and they've got to put a safety on him who's like 5'10" or 5'11", it's a nightmare.
Yep.
Right. You just go down, you do a deep curl and just box him out. Right.
Especially in the end zone.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to score touchdowns in between 20. You need big dudes.
In Madden, the tight end was always money in the end zone. Always. Okay. All right.
Do you want to hit on Caitlin Clark, by the way?
I don't want to hit on Caitlin Clark, but
no.
Let's do a few more NFL teams here. All right. I got another team that I think is gonna be trouble for some teams. And I know that I'm kind of going against the grain a little bit here because this guy is a head case, but I think the Cardinals are going to be trouble.
Oh, I like the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think they're good.
Who's the head case?
Kyler Murray.
I thought that's what you were. Yeah, he is a bit of a head case. That whole. I'm worried. I'm curious if he's studying. When he got his contract extension, that clause of like, are you studying enough?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I didn't see this play, but Mark Schlereth was like, he said that last week's game, he watched the entire Cardinal game. He said it was one of the most dominating performances by any quarterback he's ever seen. And there was a play where he was kind of going rolling right, rolling left kind of a deal, right? And he unleashes this ball about 60 yards down the field. And he did a Steph Curry, and he just walked away, like after he threw it, and started walking to the sidelines because he knew it was going to be a touchdown. Like, that's scary, right? Like, the dude knew before the guy even – I think it was Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it went viral. And because Kyler Murray has so much talent. You know, wasn't he like a first-round pick in baseball too or something if he wanted to?
Yeah, the A's picked him. Right,
yeah.
The A's picked him. It's like
so when I looked at his career, like back in 2019, because he's so small, my first concern is, can you physically survive in the NFL, and can you find a way to do so where you can input your strengths? And so it took a while. It's taken a while. 2022 was the nadir for him. At that point, I think a lot of us were like, is this guy even any good? Is he getting, the halo effect from being number one overall? But I wouldn't be surprised if he put it together and had a fringe MVP season, or maybe even a real MVP season. I guess I would be surprised if he had a real MVP season, but he's because like Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, oh my God, Marvin Harrison, obviously, what was he, the murderer, right? Like, terrible.
Yes,
that sucks. That's awful. I'm just talking about his play.
Somebody who is usually a part of our chat group, like, lived down the road from Marvin Harrison. They actually heard the gunshots when it happened. So yeah, like that close. I guess it was a garage, like he had owned a garage or something. But as far as gene pool goes, I mean, like, the guy was amazing.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. has been a can't miss wide receiver prospect for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So when they drafted him, I look at him as a potential Larry Fitzgerald type of player. He could put that kind of career together.
Absolutely. And, Kyler Murray has a gun, man. That guy can fucking throw. I mean, what is he like? He's like 5'9", but he can sling it 65, 70 yards easy on a dog.
Yeah, he's really athletic. Like, he's he's below 6 feet, but it's not Drew Brees below 6 feet. It's like, right. Aside from my height, I'm one of the best athletes in the world. So
right,
okay.
Exactly. I think they're going to be trouble for teams, and their coach, Jonathan Gannon, who used to be the D coordinator for the Eagles, is a really good coach, and he's going to have that team believing in themselves. And they've got this guy Trey McBride, who's really good. Michael Wilson, who played at Stanford, wide receiver, and they still have James, what's his name, from the Pittsburgh Steelers. James Conner is still running the ball, right? He is still gaining 100 yards a game. Like, he can't be stopped.
I love James Conner. I was like kind of down on him at the beginning of his career because he's like, what is this plot? I don't like plotters. Like, why are you in the league? Like, what's going on? But no, dude's been like, last year he was legit good, like legit amazing, honestly. So
yeah, so Connor is actually another page in my fantasy football history annals. So we're in this draft, like it's a Yahoo league. We have the first pick. And I knew who I want to pick. I want to get Patrick Mahomes. And this is before Mahomes is even really anybody, because I knew he was going to be somebody. And we couldn't get off automatic. Like, we're like fucking around trying to. So who was the top rated player that year in that draft? Le'Veon fucking Bell, who never played freaking down, right? So we're stuck with Le'Veon Bell. And about 9 rounds into the draft, I said, we should get this Connor guy just in case. And he saved our bacon. He totally saved our bacon. It was kind of like we drafted Trey Lance, and we had Brock Purdy waiting in the wings. But Connor, he's durable, and he's still in the league. So I think the Falcons are going to be problematic. They're going to be good.
You mean the Cardinals?
Cardinals, yeah.
Yeah, because the Rams suck. The Rams, they have a good coach. They have a good quarterback. Well, the wideouts are good when they're healthy. They can't stay healthy. Aaron Donald's gone, so one of the best defensive players ever. I've been down on the Rams for a while because they sold everything out to win the title. They won the title, and now you got to pay the cost.
That's right. That's right. What do you think of McVay? I kind of like McVay. What do you think?
Oh, I love McVay. I've always loved McVay.
I wish the Niners had hired Washington. I wish they'd had hired him instead of Shanahan.
Oh, what? So
yeah, I do. I do.
Still think that?
I know. You know what? Okay, I got to say something. I like Shanahan. He's a great play caller. He comes from the right tree. I saw something with him 2 weeks ago that embarrassed me. He had a party, and he was kind of dressed like a pimp. And he was wearing a white suit. He had a cane, and he has fucking Rick Ross at his party. I'm like, what are you doing, Kyle? This is like, you can have anybody at your party. It's fine. It just looks really awkward. This is incredibly awkward looking. So I don't know. I think he's a genius. But I think Sean McVay plays better long term. That's what I think. I just think his vibe is better long term. I think Kyle can grind a little bit, and I also don't think Kyle is great coaching from behind. Like, when he's great when they're running and they're going downhill, like it's like a freaking battering ram. But they don't play well from behind. So I think he's got some chinks in the armor, but I like.
Well, I'll say two things. One, this is splitting hairs because I think both are top 5 coaches in the NFL and both are strong candidates to be the best coach in the NFL.
Yeah.
And two, very few who does play well from behind. Because if you got behind, it means you were playing poor enough to get behind.
That's a good point. I was spoiled by Montana and Bill Walsh. And whenever Montana was on the field, you always thought, we have a chance. Right?
I respect that. Because I'm Steve Young. I was spoiled with Steve Young. I was like, yeah, we always got a chance. Steve Young. Like, just make sure we have the ball last.
When Steve Young was on, he was amazing. He threw an incredible ball. And his running ability was crazy.
Steve Young was probably my favorite athlete. Definitely an NFL athlete as a kid. I was just a massive Niners fan. Steve Young, Rice, Ricky Waters, like
Ricky. Love
Ricky Waters. He was so underrated.
Totally underrated. And he was a poet too, right? Like, he'd write all this poetry and shit.
Wow. Isn't that so interesting? These gentle giant themes.
Yeah. So astrologically, Steve Young and Jerry Rice I think they're born in different years, but their birthdays are a day apart, right? So we're talking like super conjunction. Like, those guys' sons are almost right on top of each other. I'm like, well, that makes sense. I think one is October 11th, the other is October 12th. I think one of them is Crowley's birthday. Mistaken. Anyway, you'll suss it out. All right. Did we leave any stone unturned here?
I guess, who do you got tonight? I think the game already started, but I already kind of said who I got. I got the Jets.
I'm going to go with the Jets. I'm going with the Jets. I gotta see Gerard Mayo coach under pressure, right? Like, he's a first-time head coach. He was a great player, massive tackler. Like, he was one of those guys that if you were drafting a fantasy defensive player, Gerard Mayo was your guy.
Yep, because he got all those tackles.
Huge. It was like he'd get 2 tackles on one play. He'd be the Angel what's her name? The Angel Reese version of tackles in the NFL. All right, let's just go through some of the games this weekend. Let's just see quickly what we got. And I'm going to get your opinions here. All right, New York at Cleveland. So they're at Cleveland, and the line is Cleveland minus 6.5. And the over/under is 39.5. I'm going to throw this up here. What are your thoughts on that?
As a sports bettor, I would stay away because
I would stay away. I would stay away from that game.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
That's a trap of a line where like we have Deshaun Watson week 1, absolutely terrible. Week 2, passable. If we get a passable or better Watson, I like the Browns to cover there. But he hasn't been passable more times than not the past couple of years. He's been absolutely terrible.
Deshaun Watson, oh my God, I'm not sure how he pulled that game out last week, but he's been a disaster.
And I don't like the Giants, but in the NFL, any team could beat any team, especially if they're playing harder. The Giants their season's not over. Like they're going to come out playing as hard as they possibly can.
Yeah,
so
I like the Browns defense versus the Giants offense. If I had to take somebody, I'd take Cleveland, and I would take Denver.
If I had to, I would.
Yeah. Okay, this is an important factoid. Green Bay is playing Tennessee on Sunday. Like rest differential, dude. Right? No, I'm thinking about the Jets. No. So, all right, who played Monday night? Philly and the Falcons. All right, so we're just going straight. Green Bay, Tennessee.
Tennessee's negative 2.5. They're favored by 2.5, and they're at home. I got the Packers here. I just don't think the Titans are very good.
I don't either. I don't trust Will Levis at all.
I think he's absolutely awful. One of the worst quarterbacks out there.
Yeah.
And I just like the Packers. I like what they've built. I like Matt LaFleur, what he's built since getting there. Oh yeah, I think Jordan Love is out. I think that's the.
Well, it didn't stop them last week. They found a way to win with Willis, which I think they went run.
This is another one as like a better. I don't have enough of an edge to actually put money on it, but as a recreational fan, I would pick the Packers. I just think they're institutionally more competent than the Titans, and the Titans and Will Levis are going to turn the ball over and give the Packers a lot of opportunities to control the game.
I would go with the Packers. I take the under. I'll take the under.
Yeah.
All right. Chicago and Caleb Williams, who is looking pretty rough here over the first 2 games against Indianapolis. And it's -1.5 for Indy. Over under is 43.5. So you have Richardson at the helm for Indy and Williams with Chicago. What do you? This is another weird, tough game.
Maybe I'm dumb. I need to do some more research. I like the Colts.
Yeah.
I like Anthony Richardson.
I like him week 1. I thought I picked him to beat the Packers last week, but that didn't work.
It's going to be some big growing pains. And 2 weeks in, he's looked absolutely terrible. But again, this is the NFL. Like it's so high variance that the biggest danger when you start thinking past performance predicts future results reliably, you're like, I could easily see Richardson going off and just having a big game like that. I'd say there's like a 25% chance of him just going crazy and winning the game, which is good enough. Also, I think just Indy's at home. All they have to do is win.
What do you like the over under on this one? I don't think Chicago can't score. They can't score. I think Chicago, if they get 16 points, I think that's their ceiling.
Keenan Allen is questionable. How bad is that injury? He didn't practice Thursday. He's probably out. Yeah, they need Keenan Allen. I love Keenan Allen. DJ Moore is okay. Like, ooh man, he's been awful. I like Caleb Williams. What I've been seeing on Twitter from Cognoscenti, like breaking down his tape, is that he's getting a lot of responsibility to make calls. And again, he's a rookie with not a lot of talent. I don't expect it to go that well, but I expect a lot of variance. Like he could have a decent little game. But I would, if I had to choose, I would take the under. It's such a messy game. NFL, it's hard to bet. So like my strategy is I'm going to take like the 2 or 3 games that I really feel like I have alpha on, and then the rest I got to learn.
Okay, these next games are interesting. Houston at Minnesota. This is going to be a good game.
Definitely one of the best games of the week.
Right, and they've got Houston -2, over under 46.5. Now we just saw Brian Flores confused Brock Purdy pretty well last week. And so Bobby Slowick is the OC in Houston who comes from Kyle's system. will CJ Stroud have a better chance of here's what I like about Houston that the Niners don't have. Houston has guys that can take the top off the field, right? You've got Nico Collins, Tank Dell. Those guys are really fast. I kind of like Houston in this game.
I think Houston's a clear Super Bowl contender, and this line is like their Super Bowl contender. This is a really tough line because they're on the road.
Yep.
And if I would probably pick the Texans though. I am higher on the Vikings than the average, but I don't think they're like legit that good. Like they were great last week. I don't know. Show me that again.
Right. And I think they had some starters go out. I think Justin Jefferson went out. I think Addison went out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them.
Jefferson's questionable. He says he's definitely going to play. Mm-hmm. I like the Vikings more when Hawkinson comes back. Hawkinson, to me, is one of the best tight ends in the NFL.
It's really good.
You get Hawkinson, Jefferson, Aaron Jones, Samuel Darnold. Like, okay, this offense is not to be slept on.
No. Here we go. We got a war here. Philadelphia at New Orleans. In the Superdome, New Orleans -2.5. Over under 49.5.
Philly's been real disappointing so far.
They're coming off a Monday night game, so rest differential comes.
Yep, no AJ Brown either.
I'm going with the Saints on this.
I have to go with the Saints. How can you not?
I'm taking the over too. I'm going over on this score.
The Saints have been one of the best teams in NFL history through 2 weeks. I'm taking the Saints.
Yeah, I'll go Saints. I'll go over.
Yeah, I like the over too because the Philly can score.
Philly can score. They can run some points up. So it's all about defending. LA at Pittsburgh, so they're traveling, and it's Pittsburgh -1.5, 35.5 over under. Have they settled the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh? Is it going to be?
It's Justin Fields for now. Yeah.
Okay.
It seems like they're coaching him up a little bit.
I'm going to go Chargers on the road for this.
I also got the Chargers. I don't like the Steelers. I don't think they're very good. I think they manage with good coaching and good defense, but talent, like especially offensive talent, is just an absolute joke.
Yeah, they don't have any. They really don't. Denver at Tampa. This is going to be a good game, Denver Tampa Bay, but I'm going with the Bucs. This is the Bucs. I
definitely take the Bucs money line. 7 point. Yeah, I'll take the Bucs there too. The Bucs, they've looked competent. I don't think the Broncos are competent, like straight up.
Yeah, I think they're kind of like, in this Pipe phase. Like I'm not sure they know who they are, right? Yep. Like Tampa has an identity.
Exactly.
And I don't think Denver knows who they are.
Sean Payton is still combing over the roster, finding his guys, putting his program in.
Yeah. Okay, so we agree on that one. To me, this one's easy. Although Andy Dalton's back in the saddle, the Red Rifle. We got Carolina at Las Vegas. The line is Vegas -5. Over under 39.5. Who you got?
Yeah, and Vegas is at home. I got the Panthers to cover.
Okay.
I can't say they're going to win though. I'll take the Raiders money line, and I'll shockingly take the over because I often find when a struggling team puts in their like the locker room backup favorite, that Panthers are going to play really, really, really hard this week.
Yeah, they'll have some like rally energy, right? Like they'll be sort of like I don't know, they get their second party win or something.
Because again, we're still early in the season, and just because me and you and everybody else says the Panthers are the worst team in the NFL in the not for long league, you win week 3, you still have a shot at the playoffs.
Absolutely.
So the team's not giving up yet.
Yeah. All right, so Miami looks like Skylar Thompson's going to be a quarterback. Good luck with that. At Seattle, I'm going Seattle on this. I think Mike McDonald is a really good coach. Geno Smith is, believe it or not, he's a top 10 quarterback statistically.
Yeah, I know. It's shocking.
Right. Geno Smith's kind of amazing. right? Because he was in the Jets. He was terrible.
Yes, he was Zach Wilson. Like he's the model of what Zach Wilson can become, and why you don't give up on talented quarterbacks too easily.
And he got the Pete Carroll treatment. Pete Carroll's just like Mr. Positive, right? And he just blasted Geno Smith with positivity. I like. What about the line? What do you think of the line?
I got Seattle, like not even close. I like the Dolphins, but they don't have a quarterback, and I love Mike McDonald. I think he's top 5 coach in the NFL. But the Seahawks, talk about institutional competency. The Seahawks have institutional competency for 15 years.
It's John Schneider. It's the GM, John Schneider. He's great.
He's amazing. Every year, how do they get these cornerbacks? Every single year, they just have 2 more cornerbacks that are ranking at the top of the stats, the sabermetric stats. I'll get their names in.
John Schneider is the best drafting GM in the NFL, hands down. Every year they get a haul, and they've been really good at developing most of the talent. Not all the talent, but most of it.
Yep. I really like the Seahawks. They're really underrated.
All right,
I guess they won't be after this week, but
this is a must-win game for both of these teams, Baltimore and Dallas. Right? Baltimore's going to Dallas. Both of these teams need a win. If Baltimore loses, they're 0-3.
Yeah.
Right? And
Dallas this really is must-win for Baltimore.
Yeah. Okay, -1. What do you think here? Do you think Lamar and these guys can pull it out in Dallas?
Now, this is another line I would never bet because I'd rather root for this game as a fan.
Yeah.
The Cowboys are really good, and the Ravens are really good. Both of these teams are legit Super Bowl contenders. So I'm going to pick the Ravens just because so much in the NFL, so much in sports, it's about how hard can you play. Like the Ravens, this is everything. This literally is their season. The Cowboys, and the Cowboys have always had motivational issues. Like just last week's a great example. They'll just have a random stinker. And they do not consistently live up to their talent. But the Ravens, even when they lose, like rarely do the Ravens look incompetent. Rarely are you like, wow, what the hell was going on?
Right. And with Dallas, every now and then the wheels just come off, right?
So the Ravens, they've lost 2 close competitive divisional games. Like, I'm not worried about their performance. Yeah,
I'm going to go with the Cowboys, and because they were totally embarrassed last week, and Micah Parsons looked like just dog meat. He was not very good.
Look, the Cowboys are talented enough to blow out any team in the NFL.
Yeah.
So I would not be surprised if they win. But what I'm going to update, they have Malik Hooker is questionable. He's one of their star safeties. And Trayvon Diggs is limited as of Thursday's practice. And what's his name? The star receiver, CeeDee Lamb, he was limited in Thursday's practice. So they're pretty banged up.
Yeah. Lamar's one of those guys that, can you really trust him in the passing game all the time? I mean,
no, you can't.
You can't. So if you have a guy that's dinged up in your secondary, it's like I'd rather have all my linebackers healthy. Right?
Yeah. And a lot of it is also the Ravens wideouts kind of suck.
They're not good. They're not.
They're average at best.
Yeah.
They have to be schemed essentially, and that's never good. And Mark Andrews is their star tight end, but again, he's kind of banged up, getting a little old. Like, do you still have it? He hasn't been good so far. It's like 65 yards through 2 games. Mark
Andrews was a beast. I mean, he was a total beast. And I think, again, wear and tear. He doesn't have a lot of tread in the tire, I think.
And, if he's not a star, like where does Baltimore get their offense from? Is it just the Lamar Jackson show? Like,
right, exactly. Okay. San Francisco, LA, I think we're both on the same page on this one.
Oh, wow. I can't believe San Francisco's only 6.5.
Well, they're playing in SoFi, but 70% of the fans will be 49er fans there. So it's almost like a second home game for them.
The Cooper Kupp is doubtful. The Nakua is out.
Yeah.
Like, okay, these are your 2-star wide receivers that your whole scheme, your whole identity is based around with Matthew Stafford.
And they can't run the ball either. That's the other thing. So if you can't pass and you can't run,
I know. No, the Niners are way too talented, even though they're banged up. You know, and this is still a big game for them. It's a divisional game, and 2, they're only 1-1.
Yeah, they need a get well game with the Rams. And Brandon Ayuk needs to show out.
Yeah, they need him. And this is what you got paid for. This is what you were talking about. You're a star receiver. Okay, like show and prove.
You know whose son was conjunct that Pisces moon eclipse was Brandon Ayuk's. So Ayuk's born on the 15th, the Ides of March. This game is going to be a war. Detroit at Arizona.
Ooh, that's a hell of a game. We got some amazing games this week.
Some good games this weekend. -3, Detroit -3. I'm going with the birds, the desert birds on this. I think they're rolling. And
that's a great line. Because they're saying Detroit wins by essentially a touchdown or more. Like, wow. I like the Cardinals to cover and the Lions to win. Whew.
I think it's going to be a shootout too.
I'll take the over too. This is wow. Goff has been awful. Three interceptions to one touchdown.
The Lieber quarterbacks have not been doing well. Trevor Lawrence and Jared Goff are.
The Lions are legit Super Bowl contenders and they're healthy, so I'm gonna go with that.
You know, I just read before we started the show, Dan Campbell just sold his house.
Yeah, for privacy reasons.
Reasons. Why? I mean, I get it. Timing's weird though, right? It's like weird timing. Like, why? Is it because people keep coming over and bringing in pies or something, or what? All right. Last we got 2 Monday night games this week. Okay, Kansas City at Atlanta, -3. Okay. I'm going upset here. I'm going with the Falcons.
Me too. Like you've convinced me on the Falcons.
Yeah.
And it's oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You go.
Because it's mostly because I don't think the Chiefs are that good.
Yeah. I think the Chiefs are in trouble, and I like the Falcons got a win underneath them last night, and I think they're gonna roll here.
They're at home too.
At home.
Like with the line, again, when you have a line of the road team favored by 3 points, it's essentially saying that you think they're going to win by a touchdown because that's just the way that the NFL scoring is. I don't think the Chiefs are anywhere near that good. I think the Falcons at home can put together a competent game on average. So yeah, I like that. And you were right about Bijan Robinson. He's been absolutely phenomenal.
So what's interesting about this game, we talk about rest differential, because they did play on Monday night, but they're playing at 7:20, right? They're not playing like an early game. You know, they're playing a game later in the day. And I think that does mean something, right? Like it's almost like you're kind of almost stretching it out to a full 7 days by playing at 7:20 at night. So I think the rest differential here might be a little overrated. I think they're going to be fine. And then we get 2 Monday night games, which is unusual. We got Jacksonville at Buffalo. Buffalo -5, 45-5 over under. Who do you like here?
1 second, I got sidetracked on my tab. Oh, Jags Bills. Oh, I got to take the Bills here. Whew, and the line, they love the Bills. Bills by 5. Well, actually 5 at home isn't that much. I would expect 6.5. I think the Bills are legit. I think they're really good title contenders. Yep. They're at home. It's kind of a slam dunk. Like, yeah, sure, the Jaguars have a chance because it's so much variance, but I wouldn't favor them.
Okay. This next game, I think, is trickier than it looks. I mean, I look at it and go, oh, of course, Cincinnati. But I think this Daniels kid in Washington play. And they have talent. Terry McLaurin's really good. I kind of like. I'm gonna go with Washington to cover this game. I don't know if they're gonna win. I think they'll cover.
Yeah, there's a chance that the Bengals are just not good.
Right. They had one crappy game, and then they had one where they were kind of like Bengals.
Now, to be fair, they haven't had T. Higgins all year. He's questionable.
And what's happening with Jamar? What's happening with Jamar Chase? Is he playing or is he out? Is he signed?
Excuse me. He's definitely playing, but to me, he needs his running mate. Like it's the Chase Higgins show with Burrow is where the Bengals are special. Just one of them is passable. It's average, but that's not what makes the team special. So I want to see Higgins play. And I also want to see Higgins. I need to look into his health reports. Like a lot of times, like a limited participation on Thursday tends to be the last full day of practice before the game. If it's just like a limited participation, that implies they're not that healthy coming off of injury. So you're right. This is a tough game. Like the Bengals, I definitely like the Commanders to cover because we don't have evidence that the Bengals are that good.
So there are two guys that aren't on the Bengals that I think they miss. One of them is Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is really underrated. And, he's one of those guys where, if the option for Higgins or Jamar Chase, there's Tyler Boyd. Like he's there, right? And he's tough. Yep. The other guy they really miss is Joe Mixon. They miss Joe Mixon.
I know. I agreed. He's tearing it up because Joe Mixon is one of the few backs that can be an every down back and handle the wear and tear. And that is just so rare. Just to soak up that volume, even if it's not extremely productive, it just takes so much pressure off your other skill position players.
Yeah. So I like the Commanders to cover, and I'm gonna go with you on Buffalo. I think I don't know. I think that Buffalo game is going to go over. I feel like the Bills. I think the Bills are going to score a lot of points. That's my. I do too. Sense. Yeah.
The Bills are dangerous.
Yeah, they are dangerous. And the other game, I can see that maybe going under. I can see that going under. But,
which one?
The
Commanders.
The Commanders
yeah, I could see because the Commanders. I need to look into their defense more. But the past couple of years they've had a really underrated defense.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're almost out of time. Do you want to talk a little Aaron Hernandez? You want to save it for next week?
Let's save that. I liked your Caitlin Clark point. I just wanted to maybe briefly introduce that to monitor because this is the WNBA play. The regular season ends today.
Yeah.
And so what was your thesis on that?
Well, I think, just from an astrological perspective, she's a 0 Aquarius. And Pluto has been on her sun since it ingressed into Aquarius. And she's become this very profoundly transformative character. And the WNBA was nothing, right? It was like this, pardon my pun here, Bush League. And you got that. That's good. And she comes along and she starts selling out all these arenas, right? Because she's got some game. And then she elicits, with Pluto, that intense polarity. You either love her or you hate her, right? And she's become this lightning rod for her sport. And in some ways, sports in general.
Yeah.
All these social issues are getting kind of worked out and flexed around Caitlin Clark. And I find it to be, I don't like to watch the WNBA, but from a cultural perspective, I think you'd be hard pressed to find one athlete that has come in and so radically transformed the league that they played. The closest I could think of would be, even though hockey was popular, Wayne Gretzky kind of did that with hockey. Especially when he played with LA, he really electrified it and changed. Although the NHL had been around and had fans, I've never seen an athlete do this to a sport. To be fair, a lot of these sports are already developed and they've got, waves and waves and waves, standing on the shoulders of giants. But this is profound what she's done. And it's turned the WNBA into, for some people, must-watch TV, believe it or not. So that, to me, the Pluto-Aquarius conjunction, and in some ways, this is an interesting question. I'll ask you this question, okay? if you were to go into an average household with boys and girls in that household who watch sports, who do you think they would know more? Caitlin Clark or Anthony Edwards?
Oh, Caitlin Clark.
Right.
Not even close.
Right. I mean, at that point, she's even eclipsing the NBA, and that's one of the best young players.
So I love that use of eclipse, by the way.
Yeah, right, exactly. I think it's a fascinating story. Let me ask you this question. Pluto, will be on our sun for roughly 2 to 3 years, right? Like once it gets out to about 5 degrees, 6 degrees, it's still in conjunction. Do you see her have? Because I think Aquarians, by and large, don't last long, right? They come in, they flash, and then they kind of go away. Do you see her having a long career, or do you think when Pluto moves off her sun by 5 degrees roughly, you think like that's it? She hangs it up. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. The answer is I don't know. But to speculate astrologically, I noticed she has Saturn at 8 Gemini. So Uranus enters Gemini next year. Uranus Saturn conjunction, which is this 2024? So I off my head, that's like late 2027, 2028.
Yeah.
That, like, because Saturn represents institutions, and what's her name? Clark is the individual embodiment of the institution. Like, she's become larger than life. So we'll see. So she's a representative of the WNBA. There's something that will break free that of some kind of structure. So I could see, like, so, and with your theory, it could be like, oh, well, she transcends the sport and allows some kind of infrastructure to be built within WNBA that would not have been allowed before her, Right. The most salient, powerful thing that you said, in my opinion, is that social issues are being worked out with her as a platform. I think that's a beautiful articulation of why we are so fascinated with her. And that has legs. Because I'm a huge NBA fan. And basketball is my number one sports love, always has been, always will be. But I'm also, like, I'm a Libra rising, Cancer moon. I believe it's really important to meet people where they are. So you might not be NBA nerd, but I've talked to people when I was in Florida, like women, LGBTQ, absolutely fascinated with Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. And so I feel obligated as, an educator, a fan, to be conversational with the WNBA. So like, to me, the WNBA has star talent like Sabrina Ionescu and Breanna Stewart. Like, it just doesn't have a lot of stars. And it's outside of the stars, the level of performance is so low. So maybe we could see Clark inspiring, kind of like Steph Curry, inspiring so many youth that we see a much more competitive WNBA generationally speaking. And finally, I want to add on that. So her sun was locked into the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction of December 21, 2021, I believe. So we're seeing, like, because she was a college star, right? So we've been seeing this energy play out and mature.
And that's a long-term cycle. That's a 20-year cycle, right? With the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, like the next time it comes around, it's going to be a 20-year cycle. So that's a really, really good point. I mean, and to your point, like, she just checks all these boxes, right? Like, woman, we think she's straight, but then the WNBA, you get, LGBTQ, there's white, there's black, right? Like, there's so much there.
And she's actually really good.
Like, she's good. That's the other part, right? And we would be having this conversation if she wasn't good. So, okay, I'm glad we touched on that. And, hey, man, great first show. This has been awesome.
Likewise, thanks for having me, and I'll be ready for more.
Okay, so Monday night we'll hit it before the Monday night game, and we'll bring on my guy Ferris, also known as Astrologer. He's an Aries, cool dude, trainer, athlete. You'll dig it.
Nice, that's what's up.
Okay, all right. Let me say bye to chat. Thanks for being here.
Yes, and let me Let me plug briefly. OsirisAstrology.com, Astrology Osiris on X. That's it.
All right. OsirisAstrology.com.
Yep.
Put it in chat. There you go. All right. Follow on X too. He's a great follow. And you get some interesting stuff with crypto. And every now and then he'll tell somebody to fuck off, which is always,
Uranus at 29 Sag.
Yeah. I get it, dude. I'm glad you've been on my side on the David Icke side of things. I've appreciated your support.
I knew from the beginning. Icke is a joke. Like, come on.
Yeah, I appreciate your support. All right, let's play the anthem and we'll get out of here.
Be serious, man. You cannot be serious.